Hello, good evening. Okay, looking at my notes. Hello, this is Gary Adugedo, psychologist, psychotherapist. I'm at home, as you can see. I hope that light's not too distracting, but is it that one or that one? No, maybe it's this one. No, that's not still distracting, but whatever. A little bit closer, maybe. Not see it as much. If I go like that, that's it. Haha, that's better. There's still another light, but that's just a reflection of the light from the kitchen. So I could do something about it, but I'm not going to. So, hello, good evening. This is the Living in Harmony channel. This is the 70-day challenge. Today is Wednesday, the 7th of May. It's been, I talk always a little bit about myself to begin with, to say where I'm up to. I don't have many patients on Wednesdays because Wednesday afternoon I do usually other things than consult. Today I drove my wife to Montreux, which is a very beautiful part of the Canton Vaud, which is part of Lausanne, which is not part of Lausanne, which is next to Lausanne, and in Switzerland, in the French-speaking part, the French Riviera. That's where they have the Montreux Jazz Festival, where I actually used to work, not in the Jazz Festival, but the Montreux. So, I spent a few hours in the afternoon waiting for her, going forward with the book of the journal, or the journal. And that's something that I will produce over the next weeks, maybe months. I don't know how long it'll take me. And the journal, the idea is that you write every day where you're at, how you feel, you note how you're going forward on your process. And there is a journal page that is attached to most of these videos. If you're looking at this video in its replay form, it should have the page already attached. There is a form to fill in to start the 70-day challenge. Even if you come in a bit late, it doesn't matter. You can still do what you can. And there's also a journal page that you can download and copy and copy and copy and copy. It's free. But I am working on a journal book. There shall be a physical book and an ebook. It will have 70 pages to fill in. That's if you've got the physical book. If you've got the ebook, then you can't do that. But what's going to be interesting is that I have a couple of chapters from my books, which I have, with the help of the computer, I'm in the process of editing into 70 mini chapters so that every day you can read a small bit of the story. And that could maybe keep you going forward and stuff like that. And there's about a few hours editing these chapters, and it's still quite a long way to go, but that's what I've been doing today. So today, this evening, I want to talk about failure. Now, failure is a very, very important subject, and I've written something very, very profound, so I'll read it. It says, failure implies risk, and risk creates opportunities. And opportunities offer the possibility of success. Failure is only unachieved success. It's an interesting word, unachieved, but it actually exists. It's actually a real world. So unachieved success. And what I've done is I've looked on the internet and I have printed out a whole series of 10, it's not an awful lot, but 10 quotes from famous people about failure. And I'm going to put my glasses on. If you've never seen my glasses, these are my glasses. It helps me look intelligent. I'm more intelligent with my glasses on. I have no idea. So we start off with the classic that most people actually know. It's from Thomas Edison, who He didn't invent the light bulb, but he took the concept and he worked at it and he worked at it and he worked at it. He really perfected it. And he says, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And so it's like he had his enormous list of different filaments and different gases and different types of glass to hold it in. And every time he tried a combination that didn't work, he said, okay, well, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll do it that way. You can see my hand better that way. And there's always this concept of learning, apprenticeship. I get confused with French, with apprenticeship and not giving up. Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. When you consider he was a wartime prime minister, obviously the Second World War, and yes, in a war, there are many battles that you lose. And you have to accept that losing the battle does not mean you've lost the war. It just means you better learn quickly what's going wrong so you can get it right. And England and the Allies, not England by themselves, but England with the Allies, we won the war. And that's because we learned from our mistakes, we learned from our errors, and we didn't stop fighting, we didn't give up. Robert F. Kennedy, American president. Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. So the bigger the risk that you take, the bigger the gain at the end. And of course, you can fail. And if you fail with a big risk, then it's a big failure. But if you don't risk, you can't win, you can't succeed. The more you risk, the more you can succeed. I'll talk more about the assessing risk and thinking about risk and what you do with risk in a moment. But it's such an important subject. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Henry Ford, who became incredibly rich with working online. What it's called now. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Chris Bedford, he was a runner, I think. There is no failure except in no longer trying. So this is a theme that you will also, is that giving up. That giving up is the failure. It doesn't matter what you do, how much you succeed, how much you don't succeed. If you give up, you've failed. Now, there is something in that I am not 100% agreeing with. And I need to explain it because you can get it wrong and I don't want that. So it's sometimes you need to give up temporarily. Sometimes you need to say, okay, this is not succeeding. I need to leave it. I need to take a step back and reflect. Now, I was writing a book, 2019 it was, and it was on the archetypes. And I had it's one of my theories, and you can find the book because it does exist now. And it's about archetypes. And I had about 100 archetypes listed of different ways that people can function, because it's coping strategies. The archetypes are a way of looking at the coping strategies, and I had 100. And to do that, I had written I had a theory book, and then I had a part of that book was details and explanations of each of those archetypes. And those explanations were like 3, 4, 5 pages each. And so with 100, it was like 500 pages. And I'd done about 6, 8, 10, I don't remember how many. And I just thought, I can't finish. I just can't I gave up. But I gave up knowing that it was started, and at some point I could come back to it. And then the COVID hit, and I realized that I needed to write a book on bereavement, on loss and grief. And so I did that. So I wrote the book on loss and grief, and that was great. Published it, and it was out there, and it was helping people. And then sometime later, I realized I had created a book of a game for kids, and on each page there was 4 images, and they were in color, and it was something that Amazon would print for me for a reasonable price, individual print on demand. And there were, I think, 32 cards in that. And it occurred to me that if I created a card for each of these archetypes, and then I could get 32 archetypes, 32 cards in this booklet. And then, or 32 or 48, I just don't actually remember exactly how many. Could have been 48. Anyway, so it was a number divided by 4, and it was that. And I thought, okay, I can create these images, and that is how many I'm going to do. And then, because I had a much more limited number of archetypes that I was going to use, then I had the courage and the force to go forward and finish the books. And those books exist now. There is a book of theory, there's a book of details of each archetype, and then there's a small book which have the colored images of those archetypes that they can cut out and make into cards. And so I did give up, but I gave up, if you like, strategically. It's like a retreat. You step back, you get your forces. So retreating is not giving up, but it can sort of feel like giving up. So you need to be careful just how you think about never abandon, never give up, because sometimes you need to stop. You need to stop, take stock, renew your assets, your forces, your resources to go forward. So sometimes quite a big experience of failure means you need to really take a moment to regroup. But it doesn't mean that you've given up. It just means that you stop for the moment. So there's a small nuance on that. I put my glasses back on because I need to be intelligent. Confucius said that our greatest glory is not on never failing, but on rising every time we fail. Again, it's this stuff that you don't just give up. Because if you just give up, then there's nowhere else to go and you're not, but again, it's this nuance. Bill Gates, creator of Microsoft, it's fine to celebrate success, but it's more important to heed the lessons of failure. The lessons of failure. That is the whole point of this learning process, that every time we fail, we learn. We learn more through failure than we do from success. And I don't mean that you learn not to try, that you learn to give up. That's not the lesson. Well, although sometimes it could be the lesson. Sometimes we realize that we're on a wrong track, and we need to stop that and take back our resources and take back our marbles and start again. But you just start again. And J.K. Rowling's Queen of Harry Potter. Failure is so important. It is the ability to resist failure or use failure that often leads to the greatest success. And everybody that knows her story knows that she tried to sell the first story of Harry Potter to dozens and dozens and dozens of different publishing houses, and they all said, this is not a good idea. Nobody wants to know anything about a child magician. Nobody's interested in kids' stories, and it's not going to make any money, so give it up. But she didn't. She kept trying and trying and trying and trying, and eventually she got a publisher. And we all know the enormous success of J.K. Rowling's. Richard Branson, Virgin, superhero of business. Do not be embarrassed by our failures, learn from them and start again. Again, learn and start again. And Johnny Cash, famous American country singer, you build on failure, you use it as a stepping stone. So in every situation, failure is not the end. Failure is part of the process. And if you don't accept the risk to fail, you can never succeed. By the fact that you're here, that you're watching this, that you are participating, you're risking. You're risking your time, you're risking your energy, and to some degree, if you've actually set yourself a goal, you're risking your ego. Because if we set ourselves goals and we don't succeed, what does that do to our self-image? We're not as successful, we're not as good as we thought we'd be. One of the things that I've just finished the French version of this, and one of the things that I spoke about was in my system of the secret of my successes, which I spoke about in other moments and on other episodes, is that I say that the way that I succeed, how I've succeeded the most in my life, is that I start off by dreaming. I love to dream. I'm a dreamer. I often have my head in the clouds. And I like to dream, and sometimes I dream strange things like a 70-day challenge. That's a weird dream. And what's important is that you take your dream and then you see, is it real? Is it realistic? Can you have a realistic optimism? If everything goes well, can it work? And by saying, yes, it can, then we go to the next steps. And the next steps are looking for a strategy, looking for support systems, looking at the resources that we need. But within that, and that's something I've not mentioned ever before, is the acceptation of risk, is the acceptation that maybe it will not succeed. Yes, we do a calculation, a risk assessment to see, is it more likely to succeed than not? Yeah, well, that's great. That's important. That's what we need to do to not to do things that are foolhardy or stupid or dangerous. We also need to know how much we're going to risk. I remember my brother dragged me once to a casino, and I decided I would risk £10. And that was it. That was how much I risked. And of course, I lost it, which is what usually happens in casinos. But I was very okay with that as a risk. In that particular case, I didn't really expect to gain anything and to have much success. And the success was basically how long before you lost all your money, as a different assessment. But every time that we choose to go into something and to put ourselves out, we are taking a risk. And what I have said is that in my life, my greatest successes, of course, have always been my greatest risks. And I tell two basic stories of what I call my successes. And there's been, when I think about it, is that I'm quite open to risking. I do things in ways that most other people won't do them, because there is always a risk of failure. And I've had my failures, yeah, of course. But some of my best successes and what make the best stories are things that I've risked quite a lot. And for instance, and one of the stories that I like to say is that when I was into computing, because yes, one of my past lives was in computing, I had a job offered to me, a very, very, very low-level job of data entry on a spreadsheet, very low-level job, and for a week or 2 weeks in Scotland, somewhere around Glasgow, I think, I can't remember. And was it Motherwell? Was it Motherwell? Could it be Motherwell? Which is the hometown of one of my ex-teachers. I think it was Motherwell Bridge. Anyway, so I went up to do this data entry, and the job that they was planned to start, I was supposed to enter the data for, was put off for a week. And I had nothing to do for a week. And they said, well, you're here now. Hang around if you want. So I hung around their office, and I wandered around, and I found this little room, and in this little room was this poor little computer all by itself, nobody giving it any attention. And I said, well, what's happening with this computer? And they informed me that they had employed a professional programmer to write them a program for their business, for their enterprise. And he didn't succeed to finish it, and he gave up. But the computer was there, and the program, the incomplete, failed program, was there. And so I said, well, it's okay if I have a look at it because there's nothing else to do. And he said, sure, there's nothing to lose because it doesn't work. And then I looked at it and I printed it out and I said, maybe I can make it work. Now, that's pretty stupid because by chance, yes, it was actually written in the only computer language that I knew anything about, which was BASIC at the time. It's called BASIC. And I taught myself this BASIC because my wife at the time, I was married to an astrologer, wanted me to help her rewrite a program, an astrology program. So I had to learn this program, but, you know, I was an amateur. And a professional whose job it was to write this program couldn't finish it. What chance did I have to make it work? And I said, give me a few days and I'll see what I can do. And I had a few days and I said, I think I can make this work. So I risked not an awful lot, but I risked my name and the way they looked at me to try and get something working, which I had no reason it wasn't reasonable to expect I could do it. Of course, I succeeded because that makes the story interesting. And I ended up staying there for a year. I ended up installing a whole network of computers because this program that worked, everyone wanted to use it. And then we introduced Microsoft and our own databases. And it was a very interesting year as a computer programmer, network controller, one of my past lives. And the other big risk that I took, well, I took the risk to fail, was when I came to Switzerland, and I discussed with my wife, the second one, what I should do in life, and we agreed that maybe psychology would be interesting for me. So I enrolled in the University of Lausanne to do psychology. Only one small a few technical difficulties. The first one was it's in French. I didn't speak French. That was already a bit of a risk. Other than that, I was 38 years old. I hadn't done any real study for about 15, 16 years. So I was a little bit at a disadvantage compared to the other 250 odd students, most of them half my age, 19, just coming out of high school or sixth form if you're from England, and totally at speed and into learning and stuff like that. And the third thing was that there was a 50% failure rate. 50%, that was like the system. And so the possibility of failing was actually very high. And because I was quite naive and very, very optimistic, and I was ready to take the risk. And it succeeded. And it was, I suppose, a great success. I finished in the 4 years. At that time, they didn't have a bachelor's. They had something called a licence, which was 4 years. And I finished my studies in the 4 years, and I became a psychologist. And now I'm a psychotherapist, and everything works. But again, if you don't, but I did fail exams. I did fail. And it didn't go perfectly. And what was talking about failure, at the end of the first term, one of the courses, I think it was a scientific method or something like that, there was an exam. And I failed that exam. And I failed it. I think I got something like 3 or 4 out of 10. It was quite a failure. And I went to the teacher. It wasn't a professor. It was an assistant. It wasn't actually an assistant. It was a research specialist or something. And I said, "What can I do to improve? And what did I do wrong and things like that?" And he said, "Basically, your French is rotten." And I have no idea what you're supposed to have answered. And so I said, "What are the questions? Tell me the questions again, and I'll try and answer them for you, like speaking." And he asked me the questions, and I answered them. And he said, "Yeah, well, that's right." He says, "But what you've written down is wrong." And I failed. I failed that exam. And then I didn't know what to do. So I went and spoke to his boss, who was a very nice professor who I adored, and he was very nice with me. And eventually I got the right to write basically 95% of my exams I wrote in English for all the 4 years of studies. But I failed that first exam. And the guy, I said, what can I do? He said, leave. That was it. He said, you're never going to succeed. Leave. I did a course on projective tests, with these funny things that look like butterflies and stuff like that. And I totally failed that as well. And I asked the professor, and I said, what can I do about it? She says, you will never, ever have a French that's good enough to be able to deal with this. Very analytical woman. And give it up. Now that I did give up, because it wasn't a core subject, and I could give it up. On the other hand, the second half of my studies was in Geneva, and there was a test of the first interview, which was strange because I was actually working at the time. I was doing an internship free, and I was actually doing first interviews. So I was about the only student that actually was doing it really. And yet, the theoretical way of doing it, I just couldn't quite grasp. And as well as that, I was in conflict with the reality of this first interview and the theory, which is not the same thing at all. And I didn't fail once. I failed twice. And I was incredibly fortunate that at that time in Geneva, you had a third try. And I only just passed. But again, I failed, didn't give up, carried on. And this whole point of failure is just an excuse to work harder and work smarter and keep going. And the whole point of this 70-day challenge is it's 70 days, it's 10 weeks. It's actually quite a lot. And it's very possible that during the 70 days, there are things that might not work. They just might not work. They might fail. And it doesn't matter. You just keep going and keep going and keep going. And you're going to get to the end of the 70 days one way or another, I hope. And we're going to do this together. And if you have small failures and small hiccups and small problems, it's not the end of the world. And even if at the end you only have a partial success, it's not the end of the world. We'll do it again in September. We'll keep going and we'll keep going until we get to where we want to go. We have all the time in the world. We will keep going and we will succeed. I have confidence in you. You can do this. You just need to say, it's not a big deal if it doesn't work out perfectly this time. I'll do better next time. I'll get back on the horse. I used to ride a horse, and it's normal to fall off the horse. Actually, I didn't. Not much. Very rarely. But, when they say get back on the horse, it's like, don't give up. Just keep going. And just say, well, what can I learn? How can I do this better? So that's for tonight. So don't forget, I am on YouTube 6 times a week. Sunday evening, Monday evening, Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening, Thursday evening, Friday off, and then Saturday afternoon. I have been told off by not saying please like, subscribe, share, leave comments, tell your friends. The more people that participate, the more people that benefit. You need to remember, this is 100% free. 100% free. I am here for you. And all I want from you is your success. So accept your failures and use them as stepping stones so that you can succeed. Trust you'll succeed. I have confidence in you. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.